Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of this 3-part tutorial series. So in this video we're going to be creating the flames, the smoke and the embers, and then we're going to be merging all 3 of these into one cohesive effect. One small disclaimer before we go. I recorded this video as I went along and made the effect, so there is some back and forth when it comes to entering the different values in the particle settings. These settings are in no way the only correct values to enter, so if you are trying this effect on your own, I would like for you to mix and match the different settings so that you find what you think is best. That's that. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's just keep this as is, and let's get started on adding our particles in 3D. So what you want to do is you want to copy this parent like so and connect the cylinder particle emitter. Let's rename this particle emitter cylinder like so. Then create a P emitter, drag this over, go into the region settings and switch it to mesh. Drag this new duplicated parent into the emitter. Also create a P render. We can also pipe that into either of these merges, but you know what, we're actually going to create a new merge 3D. The good things about merge 3Ds is that you can have as many as you want. Now if we go into the renderer, you can see we have some black particles following this engine, but they're black, and there's a reason for that. We're still in a projection setup. To fix this, let's move this down here like so, and copy these 2 camera nodes down here like so. Pipe that in, and then render 3D. And now we have a separate pass with the particles. So if we now just drag all of this over a bit, go into the first render with the projections, shift space merge, and then we pipe the particle pass on top of it. You can now see we have some white particles following the mesh quite nicely. So the next thing to do would be to create a sense of occlusion from the jet engine mesh. So quickly just create a override 3D. Let's split the viewers again. So pipe this first engine parent into the override 3D. In the override 3D, click do matte and check is matte. Now it just disappeared, but that just means that it's invisible. Now if we pipe this into the particle merge 3D, this shape is essentially hiding every particle that is inside the 3D model, if that makes any sense. So to just view this better, we can go into the particle emitter node, go into the style, switch the style from point to blob, for instance, and now you can see what I'm talking about. It's as if the particles are coming from inside the engine. So why don't we begin with creating the smoke particles? So let's just, for order's sake, let's just move these around a little bit, because we're going to be mixing and matching 3 particle systems in total here. So first things first, create a shift space, create a fast noise, view this in the left viewer, go into the image and change the resolution to 128 by 128. And then if we go into color, switch the type from 2-color to gradient, and then go into the gradient type menu, choose radial, and then we move the start to 0.5, so it's in the middle. And then in this gradient itself, just drag these sliders and basically invert them like so. And with the black color collected, go to the alpha and drag the alpha down. There we go. Now we have a smoke particle, let's say. Also, you can drag the end point of the gradient a bit further in so that it doesn't touch the edge, like so. Let's go into the noise section, increase the detail, and then the seed rate increase that to maximum. So if you press play, you can see that this particle is having a life of its own. Oh, and also a very neat trick that I like to do is that if you create a color corrector node or a brightness contrast, after the fast noise, view that in the left viewer, add a mask, then increase the size of this, and then drag it a little bit down so that it covers half the image like so. And then if you go into the brightness and then decrease the gain, and then in the ellipse, feather the mask a little bit. Now we have the beginnings of smoke with some actual depth. And to see what we're doing in the right viewer, we go into the emitter, into the style, and change the style from blob to bitmap. Now we can pipe this into the particle emitter like so. And now you see we have something looking like smoke. Now you can see that it has these edges here. It has to do with the transparency settings of the renderer. So to fix it, just go into the renderer 3D. Let's just rename this to particles and then R for render. And in under settings, under the controls, go all the way down to maximum texture depth. Increase this to float 16 and the transparency mode, change that to quick sort. Now you can see we are onto something a bit nicer already. Let's make a few more tweaks. Rename the particle emitter to smoke emitter. Go into the smoke emitter, into the controls tab, and then increase the velocity a little bit, because now the smoke is, have the angle, set that to 90, so that particles are getting some movement from the, you can see, yeah, they're moving in the direction. You can also do some variance to the angle and variance to the angle Z. And also a very neat trick, you can also rotate. This brightness mask that we made is essentially creating a shadow on the smoke. So you can move this mask however you want, really. Also just increase the soft edge to all the way. Yeah. Now let's go into the style settings. Increase the size variance. And then size to velocity a little bit. And then decrease the size. And then increase the size variance. Go into the back of the controls tab and increase the number of particles to maybe something like 50. Now you can see that we get a bit more thicker smoke. We can also just tweak these settings a little bit more, something like this. Just as we're passing the thing, we see some gaps in the smoke. So we could either tweak these settings, but what we also could do is that we could go to the controls tab, choose temporal distribution, and change it from all at the same time to randomly distributed, and increase the position variance a bit. This would also create a certain amount of randomness. Actually, let's decrease the size to velocity. It's that, and then maybe the variance size down, like so. Let's also go into the size over life. Lower the birth size a little bit, and then do a part where like it's really big just as it's leaving the engine. So you can see the left is the birth, the right is the death of the particle. So as I'm moving this upwards, you can see, if we go to the frame where we can see it a bit better, we're adjusting. You see it there? We're adjusting the size of the particle like so. I just want it to not be too separate. We can also color grade the smoke. So it is nighttime and the general lighting in the area is very blue. So we can just eyedrop this. Yeah, let's go with something like that. Yeah, and maybe in the alpha variance, if you drag the slider to the left, you increase the brightness. And then if you drag it to the right, you also increase the darkness. So now you're actually creating a lot more contrast in the smoke. So if you overdo it, it's going to look like you're going to have some weird artifacts because you're messing with the alpha. But I mean, you can get some pretty convincing smoke with this. Now, we have one small problem, and that is that they are popping in. And we can fix that by going to the fade controls. Now, for instance, if We go to the frame where we see the end of the particles. You can see that if we drag the fade, if we decrease the lifespan to maybe 50 and then go into the fade controls, you can see there's a nicer transition. The particles will be fading in instead of popping in. And the same will go for fading out and popping out as well. Actually, let's just do that. Now, it is a bit uniform, so we could add a P turbulence to it and just increase the strengths in the different directions to add some more velocity variance and stuff. And you'll see, yeah, this is already adding. I mean, it's just, you just got to keep adding to it, right? And massage it, and maybe increase the density of the... Actually, when I'm thinking about it, let's make the particles a little darker. Yeah, this is looking a lot better already. Let's also just do some really quick reorganizing here. Order is important, especially when working with nodes, and especially when your node trees will be getting a bit involved. Let's create a new P emitter. And then what we can do is that after the turbulence, we can create a P merge. And if we pipe this emitter in there, we can keep adding more particles to it. So just like with the smoke emitter, we would like to go into the region of this new emitter, change the region from sphere to mesh, pipe the same mesh that goes into the smoke emitter, pipe this into the new emitter as well. Let's also just create a bit more space down here. Go into the style, change that to blob. Now you can see we have some white stuff in there following the smoke. So first of all, if you just decrease the size, randomly distributed, rotation, choose rotation relative to motion, and then let's rename this new emitter fire emitter. And then if we go into the smoke emitter, pin this, now you can see that we have the fire emitter on top, and on the bottom we have the pinned smoke emitter menu. So instead of clicking back and forth, you can just scroll up and down. So first of all, let's just take the velocity, just copy all of the velocity settings into the velocity settings of the fire. Just work your way down the list. There we go. Now we have matched these. So now you can see that the blobs we have are essentially following the smoke. If we go into the style settings of the fire emitter, now we change the color to something orange and fiery. Let's also decrease the lifespan of the fire particles quite a bit, as we want it to just be in the beginning of the smoke, like so. Also increase the position variance a little bit, maybe number variance, maybe even a lifespan variance, just to have some randomness. You just want to keep tweaking these settings until you find something that you're happy with. Create a new fast noise. So let's go ahead and create the actual particle. So same as before, go into the image settings and change the resolution to 128, and go into the noise settings, uncheck lock XY, and increase one of the axes all the way. Oh, and you can also go into the style menu of the fire emitter and change the style from blob to bitmap. Now if we pipe this in like this, and then add a mask, feather the mask quite a bit, and then just make the shape a little nice. Actually, let's go back to the squeeze we did, not have the squeeze so heavy. Increase the contrast of the fire, increase the brightness, and increase the detail. Also increase the seed rate. Let's also, and the size over life, make the beginning of the life small and the ending almost 0. And then Shift S to smooth the curve. Make the curve like so. Yeah, so adjust the fade particles to something like this to fade it in. Now maybe the fire is a little bit uniform, so we could move the turbulence, hold shift and drag to move it after the merge, and you'll see we're getting some more erratic flame movement. Yeah, I think that's starting to look like something that's very promising. Now let's create some embers. So we can actually just copy the fire emitter down and then create a new particle merge and pipe that in like so. Pipe the same mesh into the copied fire emitter. Now for the copied fire particles, let's create another fast noise, and let's choose the size 128 by 128 again, and then pipe it in. Actually, we could change the lower value to 64. Maybe add a mask. Feather it. And then with this one as well, increase the seed rate, detail. Maybe we can keep the detail like this, but we can increase the contrast a little bit, and maybe scale down the mask so that we get no clipping on the edges, like so. And if we go just to a random frame here and lower the particle size of the, let's also just rename this Embers. If we lower the size like a lot here, we can actually unhook. Yeah, okay, that's still quite big particles. Just lower it even further. We want it to be small embers. We could also go into the controls here, increase the number quite a bit, and we can also extend the lifespan. Since it's embers, they usually last a lot longer. And we can also uncheck always face camera, so this one can rotate freely. Increase the size variance. Increase the size a little bit. You can also change the fade in. Change the size curve a little bit to something like this. And we can also add another P turbulence. Increase the density. And then just max out the strength. Now if we pipe the fire back in, you can see both of these effects working alongside each other. You can see that it's obviously not perfect, and that's because we're still lacking the effects like glow and motion blur, but when we add those, I think it's going to make a huge difference. Also, actually, we can go into the fire. Let me just try this and reduce the contrast to maybe to, yeah, let's go with that. Let me just make a quick final adjustment like this. Yeah, so I decreased the seed rate because I thought the flame was shifting a bit too quickly. So now it's burning a little bit more controlled. So to add some glows quickly and easily, let's just add a luma keyer to isolate some flames. And now if we pipe that into a color corrector and add the gain a little bit, and then add a soft glow to the luma keyer. We get something like this, and I think that's looking very dynamic. And now the final touch to this is to simply add some motion blur. So we're going to do it the quick and dirty way. Just for this, create a optical flow node and then a vector motion blur. Motion blur is adding a lot of realism. So I did some tweaking and I just ended up with a bit too little fire. So let's just increase that number all the way to 100. And I thought it looked a bit extreme at first, but you know, kind of like it. All right, so now we have some pretty good looking fire here connected to this engine. So let's keep that. Now let's disable the optical flow and motion blur for now.